While darts is a game of precision and mental toughness, some players have found ways to bend the rules for some very questionable wins. From suspicious tactics at the Oki to full-blown match-fixing scandals, these cheaters left fans outraged and careers in ruins. Starting with this player, Justin Pipe wasn't supposed to be the story of the 2017 World Darts Championship, but when his opponent, Bernie Smith, lined up for a match-winning dart, Pipe did something that would follow him for the rest of his career. He coughed. Not a casual, unavoidable tickle, a deliberate, well-timed disruption, just as Smith was about to throw. Smith missed, Pipe won. And in another era, that might have been the end of it, but Sky Sports had cameras, slow-motion replays, and a broadcast team that wasn't about to let it slide. Wayne Mardle called it despicable, and within days, the Darts Regulatory Authority handed Pipe a £3,000 fine.
That's right. What he did not do, that any dart player would have done apart from Justin Pipe. I've got a cough, I turn away. I guarantee I turn away. He made no effort to do so. That was a tactic for advantage, that was a tactic to make Bernie Smith miss. He got his way, whether Bernie Smith heard it or not is absolutely irrelevant. The intent was there. The DRA have to do something, because let me tell you, if he gets away with that, and it goes on again, if that was Phil Taylor doing that, Phil Taylor would be reported on the back page of every newspaper, the front page and in the middle spread. That was disgusting.
Pipe, naturally, played the victim, claimed it was all blown out of proportion, that neither the referee nor Smith had complained, but that didn't matter anymore. Once the footage made the rounds, the court of public opinion took over and Pipe was branded a cheat. The real punishment wasn't the fine, it was the reaction when he stepped up for his next match. Booed relentlessly, thrown off his rhythm, and forced to play as the villain. In a game where mental steel is everything, that kind of hostility is lethal. Did he deserve it? Some still argue it was nothing more than an unfortunate coincidence. Others see it as one of the pettiest yet most effective bits of gamesmanship in darts history. Either way, Pipe's name is now linked to one of the strangest scandals the sport has ever seen, and all it took was a cough. Phil Taylor didn't just dominate darts, he was darts. 16 world titles, countless records, and an aura of invincibility that made most opponents feel beaten before they even stepped up to the Oki. But even legends aren't immune to controversy, and in 2013, Taylor found himself at the centre of one that had nothing to do with his throwing arm, and everything to do with what was, or wasn't, on the scoreboard. It happened during the World Match Play quarterfinals, a high-stakes battle against Dean Winstanley. Taylor needed a double 12 to close out the match, and from a distance, it looked like he nailed it. The referee called it in. Winstanley didn't protest. Game over. But then came the slow-motion replay, and suddenly, it wasn't so clear. The dart had landed just outside the wire. At best, it was an honest mistake. Referees aren't infallible, and Winstanley, in the moment, had no reason to double-check. But at worst, it looked like Taylor knew and took the win anyway. And when a sport's most dominant player is caught in a moment of questionable ethics, fans don't forget.
Taylor is sat there on a potential 2-dot, although that is a nasty miss. He's still got to find himself a treble, which he has done. And Phil Taylor now looking at double 12.
And the flag, Phil Taylor. The flag, Phil to
It didn't look in at first, did it?
It really didn't, I have to say. I thought Russ had called that wrong, but it's just where we're sat in the camera angle.
The backlash was immediate. Social media exploded, and even Eric Bristow, Taylor's former mentor and a legend in his own right, wasn't shy about his thoughts. The player knows if it's not in and has to declare it. You don't want cheats. That's a Hall of Famer calling out his own protege. Taylor, never one to back down, offered a solution: replay the match. A nice gesture, except for one problem. That's not how darts works. The PDC shut it down instantly, and the win stood. Winstanley, to his credit, took the high road, choosing to move on rather than fuel the drama. Taylor walked away with another victory, but his reputation, that took a hit. In a sport built on precision and integrity, even the hint of wrongdoing is enough to cast a long shadow. For Taylor, a man used to being untouchable, this was a rare moment where the scoreboard said one thing, but the footage told another. Wesley Harms had plenty of ways to explain his 10-2 thrashing at the hands of Gary Anderson in the 2018 Grand Slam of Darts. Nerves, poor finishing, maybe just running into a former world champion in top form. Instead, he went with air quality. According to Harms, Anderson had sabotaged him with an unrelenting stench, strategically deployed throughout the match. Not metaphorically, literally. He claimed the suffocating odor wrecked his focus and, in his words, would take 2 nights to fully clear from his nose. As excuses go, this was groundbreaking. Anderson, stunned, didn't just deny it, he was offended at the mere suggestion. Yes, he admitted, there had been one unfortunate incident in the past, but this time, absolutely not. In fact, he insisted if anything smelled off, it wasn't coming from his direction. With no forensic evidence, no instant replay, and certainly no official PDC ruling on tactical flatulence, the case was closed before it even began. But the damage was done. Not to the match result, Harms lost that fair and square, but to darts history, which now had to forever acknowledge that this moment, against all odds, actually happened. It wasn't just a bad beat for Harms, it was the first and only time a darts controversy hinged on the possibility of an invisible, unsanctioned, and entirely unverifiable form of gamesmanship. And given how far some players will go for an edge, maybe it was only a matter of time. Match fixing in darts isn't just unethical, it's spectacularly stupid. The sport is built on patterns, precision, and probabilities. A player suddenly missing by just enough at just the right moment. It doesn't take a forensic analyst to notice when something's off. Yet, in 2017, Gilbert Uang thought he could slip through the cracks. Up against Kevin Sim in the PDC World Darts Championship, Uang didn't just lose, he collapsed in a way that made even casual viewers raise an eyebrow. A 7-year ban followed, and if that was meant to be a warning, plenty of players missed the memo. Kyle McKinstry, Wessel Nyman, and David Evans would all get caught in the same trap a few years later. McKinstry, in particular, made the classic mistake of getting too comfortable. He admitted to throwing one match but denied another, as if credibility is something you can negotiate after you've already confessed. It didn't work. He got 8 years. Nyman pleaded guilty and took 5, while Evans, who played along but wasn't the orchestrator, walked away with 2.5. And yet, even after those bans, match fixing didn't disappear. By 2023, another trio of players was caught rigging games in the Modus Super Series, with Indian qualifier Prash Jawar losing his PDC World Championship spot before he even got the chance to throw a single dart. Then, in 2024, Jack Main had his 4-0 victory flagged as suspicious, leading to a suspension that will keep him out of competition until at least the end of 2025. It's almost impressive, knowing the history, seeing careers get erased in real time, and still thinking, yeah, but I'll get away with it. The reality is, darts isn't like football or basketball, where you can hide behind teammates or bad luck. When you're at the oche, it's just you, your dart, and a million cameras waiting to catch the moment when bad form turns into something more deliberate. Cheating in darts usually follows a predictable script, subtle, calculated, and difficult to prove. But in 2020, a 17-year-old named Luke Littler found himself accused of something altogether different, being too good. Littler had already built a reputation as a rising star, but during the COVID lockdowns, his dominance in online tournaments became impossible to ignore. He wasn't just winning, he was obliterating opponents with an ease that made people suspicious. Was he using software to manipulate his scores, a hidden camera setup, a second player off screen? The theories multiplied as quickly as his victories. Online darts had its own quirks. Without the structure of a live venue, it relied on player integrity, an honor system that, as history shows, isn't always bulletproof. Littler, despite his undeniable talent, found himself at the center of a storm. He wasn't the first young prodigy accused of taking shortcuts, but the sheer volume of skepticism was unprecedented. Then, the lockdowns ended. Littler stepped into his first major senior event at the Irish Open in 2021 and won it. Instantly. No delay, no adjustment period. The same precision, the same ruthless efficiency. The doubters, so confident in their accusations, suddenly had to reconsider. This wasn't some unknown hiding behind a screen. This was a teenager dismantling veterans in person, under tournament conditions, with every throw scrutinized. The accusations vanished overnight, but the damage was already done. Littler hadn't just fought to prove himself on the oche, he'd had to prove that he even belonged there. The irony? If he had been cheating, he would have needed to adjust to the real thing. Instead, he played exactly the same way. The backlash had never been about evidence, just the uncomfortable reality that sometimes greatness looks unnatural until you see it up close. For years, players have pushed the boundaries of sportsmanship. exploiting the grey areas where distraction, deception, and subtle manipulation can swing a match. Some tactics are obvious: lingering too long behind an opponent, excessive celebrations, or even the occasional bit of accidental body movement at just the wrong time. But the truly dangerous ones are harder to spot. But for every scandal, there are players who transcend the game entirely. Legends who didn't need tricks, distractions, or shortcuts to dominate. And no one defined dominance quite like Phil Taylor in his prime. Click here to see exactly why Phil Taylor's prime wasn't just the best era in darts. It was one of the most untouchable runs in sports history.